My name's Antonia Roberts. I work for CoMoUK, and I'm going to be talking about how to improve access through bike sharing and highlight some of the considerations for operating a scheme in Scotland. So CoMoUK, we're a charity that supports the development of shared transport, bike share, car share, e-scooters increasingly, and DDRT. And we do this by working with local authorities, operators, community groups, and different stakeholders to create guidance, share knowledge through networks, and gather the evidence to show the impacts that schemes can make. So bike sharing, what do we mean by bike sharing? Well, basically, it's a pool of bikes that could be accessed by a number of people, i.e. shared and not owned. And there are all sorts of different models. So you're probably familiar with the on-street self-service models that we've got in Scotland with Edinburgh and Glasgow. But there's also different models where you might perhaps put a shuttle scheme in place to link to key locations, like maybe a railway station or a university campus, that kind of thing. And then there are many different community type schemes as well, where people can access daily hires, weekly hires, or even longer loans, which really work to help people to try a bike before they buy it. There's sometimes closed workplace schemes as well, or schemes particularly for people with disabilities that offer adapted bikes. And each of these schemes has got different objectives, so they may well be looking at tackling congestion or improving health outcomes, maybe providing access to employment, or perhaps just improving the offer for tourism. So bike sharing, why is it important to do this rather than just encouraging people to own their own bikes? There are several reasons to consider here. So just the cost of buying a bike can be quite prohibitive for many people, or at least off-putting. The maintenance of the bike can be quite a barrier for people, as is storage. If you live in a flat or a tenement or a terraced house. Thinking about modal trips, lots of bike share trips are multimodal. So picking up a bike at the end of a train or a bus journey. And then also bikes can offer a wider range, bike share schemes can offer a wider range of schemes of bikes, such as e-bikes, cargo bikes, or even adapted light bikes, as I mentioned. So bike share is definitely seen as a complement to ownership. I mean, it certainly can be an addition to people owning their own bike, but it's also an opportunity for people to offer to try a bike out and think about whether they're going to buy one themselves. So in which case, it's a really good tool for attracting new people to cycling. This is some of the research that we've got from our annual bike share survey. So it's taking away those barriers and it's getting more people either back into cycling or cycling for the first time. So therefore, you then offering the myriad of benefits, of physical and mental health benefits, but to a wider group of people. So bike sharing is opening it to more people under more circumstances. Again, here are some of the results that we found from our research about mental health benefits and physical health benefits. So looking at e-bikes in particular, again, this is from our annual survey, but they show that the e-bikes attract a much wider range of people. So you're looking at a wider range of ages, different levels of fitness, different levels of confidence as well, because it gives you that assurance that you're going to be able to get where you need to. Some people might not be able to actually ride a pedal bike, but because of a bad knee or a bad back or a heart condition, but an e-bike allows them to ride a bike. And then on top of this, obviously, you've got the range of extra trips that can be done through bike share as well, hillier trips, longer trips, etc. So therefore, you're then offering people a wider range of options to be able to get away from using a car. So we know that bike share reduces car use, but e-bikes could do that to an even greater factor. And we've seen this in our results from our survey as well. So moving on to thinking about Scotland, here's a map of all the different activity that's happening around bike share in Scotland at the moment, which is really quite considerable. The dark blue dots are the on-street self-service schemes that we're talking about. The pale blue dots are the closed schemes, the universities, colleges, etc. And the green schemes are the community-led schemes, and that's what we're going to be kind of focusing on this afternoon. So thinking about actually planning a scheme, obviously you need to start off by thinking about designing it. So what are you going to be offering, where, how is it all going to work? And that begins with thinking about what the objectives of the scheme are. So we've talked a little bit about whether the idea is to just get people more active, or are you really wanting to tackle a local particularly congested car route? Is there an issue about public transport that doesn't serve people all the hours that are needed for getting them to work or education? Or is there a problem with tourists bringing in cars that you'd like to try and provide alternatives to? So this leads you to thinking about what are the target markets. So are we thinking about residents, businesses, or a whole mix of these with visitors as well? If we know who we're targeting and what we're trying to achieve, then you can think about where the bikes might be located, where people are likely to be travelling to, and start to be able to design the scheme and think about, well, are we thinking about daily hires? Are we thinking about a shuttle service, or is it going to be longer term loans, or a mix of all these different offers? Carrying out formal research at this stage could be really useful, and it can also be a way of engaging with the community as well, raising awareness of what you're planning to do. And we've got some template surveys that people can access. But it's equally valid to just have a go at putting some bikes into a community, seeing what the interest is, seeing how the scheme shapes up, and letting it emerge as you go along, and adapt it as needs arise. This early stage of planning is obviously a really good time to be thinking about partnerships and things as well. So you might want to talk to local accommodation providers, holiday parks, etc., local bike shops that are already offering bikes in some form that you might be able to build upon, or charities that are working on some of the objectives that you're looking at that would want to collaborate, or equally like public transport providers like rail, bus, ferry operators even, that might want to get involved and support a scheme. So going on to think about logistics, one key thing is whether the bikes are going to be managed by staff, or whether there's going to be any form of self-service technology involved with it. If you're looking at staff, then what other roles are there in the community that this could be combined with? Who else might, what other roles might it blend well with? And then, how does that affect where you might be able to put the bikes? So if you are going to be needing some storage, then, are there existing community buildings, workplace buildings, or do you need to be able to invest in cycle shelters to be able to look after the bikes? Self-service technology, smart locks, etc., tends to come with an online or app-based booking system which you can use, but you may well want to use some form of system like that anyway, in conjunction with staff giving out the bikes, so that you can manage bookings. Or you may well just want to do it manually through emails and phone calls. And then obviously there's a whole range of different ways you can price a scheme. So from looking at providing bikes free to use, or setting up subscription models, you might want to set a different range of prices for different users, or have seasonal pricing to encourage winter use. It's also important to think about insurance and putting the right checks in place, so the right kind of hire forms to make sure you're covering the right procedures, and think about who will do the maintenance, how often those checks will be done, to kind of make sure you're fulfilling any insurance needs. And equally with safety, do you need to think about a formal training scheme, or are you going to use volunteers and buddies to help kind of give people training? Moving on to thinking about success factors, there are a number of different things to consider. So having a mix of users will help to keep the bikes used at different times of the year, which will help to even out, or different times of the week even, as well as different times of the year, to even out utilisation and maximise returns. In making sure that there are safe places for people to actually ride is really important. So, you know, you're thinking about people that are new riders or people that are new to the area. So are the routes safe enough, and are they well signed? So equally thinking about marketing events, obviously you want to get word out as far as wide as you can, but where are the opportunities to build on that, you know, through developing routes as of events, with led rides, maybe combining this with some kind of event like a pedal and picnic, or working towards getting people to travel to a tourist destination that you could package as an actual additional benefit for the scheme. I talked a bit about pricing structure already, but obviously you need to get a balance between making sure the income is sustainable, but it's, you know, affordable for all the different audiences as well. And just a note to think about monitoring this, you know, so you know what your objectives are. So think about how you're going to measure success, what that's going to look like, how you're going to ensure that you know whether you're reaching those objectives, and then think about reviewing all these different factors as you go along. The final point about planning is, and developing the scheme, is about the sustainability. So this is obviously looking at maximising the income as well as reducing costs. So as well as thinking about revenue from the hires, you might want to work with local companies to gain some advertising, either actually on the bikes, on the cycle shelter, or perhaps on the website, or even in-app. I've mentioned about the packages. There's a real opportunity there, I think, to kind of add value to the scheme and to create different offers for different audiences, which can then help to maximise income. Something that some schemes have thought about it are community shares. So that might be something that could help to raise local support for the scheme. And Community Share Scotland have got a great set of resources on their website, so I'd really recommend having a look at that. Reducing costs, obviously, you know, there's a balance again there. You could reduce the cost of staffing through volunteer help, that's only going to go so far, or sharing staff resources. Bringing in lower tech solutions is, you know, you're reducing what you're spending in terms of things like smart locks, but it might involve more staff time. One thing some people have done is thinking about using the bikes as a way of refreshing the income for a scheme. So buying bikes at cost price as much as possible, and we can signpost people towards deals with wholesalers that can make the purchase of the bikes slightly cheaper to start with, then reselling them on at the end of 1 or 2 seasons to people in the community that are interested in buying their own bike. And therefore you're providing yourself then with an income stream to buy new bikes and to make sure the fleet doesn't get too old. A couple of examples now. I must give a slight caveat, the fact that I'm not actually in the Scotland team. Harriet, who knows this work inside out, has just gone on maternity leave, and her replacement, Brian, he doesn't start for a couple of weeks. So bear with me when I won't know all of the details of these kind of schemes, but I wanted to highlight a couple that I've heard good things about. So Huntley Development Trust, they have a hire and loan scheme. They've got 14 bikes and they're growing, and these are stored in lockers that have got power with them. So the loans are for local people, and they've got hires for tourist use. And they have a range of different prices from half a day at £10 through to £100 for a week, and the costs vary depending on whether you're local or a tourist. And it's led by a staff member on a part-time basis, which works really well for them, but it does have the challenge that if people want to pick up a bike outside of core hours, then you know, they may have problems not being able to do that. A second example to highlight is Dunblane Development Trust, where they have a loan scheme which is volunteer-led. They set it up a couple of years ago with Scottish Government funding. which I think was for energy efficiency, but because they were also looking at sustainable transport, they were able to get some e-bikes in as well. So they wanted to tackle car commuting and found they had a really good interest in the scheme during COVID. And they started with some leisure rides, but that led for people to doing everyday cycling. So they give people an initial training session. They charge a service fee for looking after the bikes. They've had, in the last period, over 70 people taking loans, and 22 went on to buy their own bikes. So that was really good. You can hear more about this on our last podcast and also in one of our bike share forums that are on our website, which leads me on nicely to think about the whole range of resources that Harriet's worked really hard over the last year or so to pull together. So the images is a set of guidance documents which she has created, which take you through step by step in a lot more detail than I have of all of these different considerations. There is one podcast at the moment I'm aware of, I think there's a second one following, which does lots of interviews with different community groups. We have recordings of our past webinars, which are really a helpful resource, but also encourage you to join our future forums, where it's an opportunity to ask questions and discuss things with other members. If you want to sign up for those, then please do. I think there are a whole range of other schemes that are featured in those podcasts and recordings. So I'd recommend that you go and listen to those and hear more about it. And then just finally, just a note that I'm always happy to have conversations and for people to get in touch, but also to highlight that Bryony will be starting at the end of the month, and she'll be taking over and leading in this particular role. So please do get in touch with her as well. She'd be more than happy to help. Thank you, and I look forward to talking in the questions shortly.